Alrighty. So, with the upcoming reset and these changes here, we'll go over them once again and talk about them, as well as talking about them with the hero talent for Thane. Thane might become the go-to playable spec for Fury in Mythic Plus. It's getting decent buffs, and if they continue to buff anger management by buffing things like base, bloodthirst, and raging blow, among other things, anger management Thane might do pretty well. Without some Frosty K nerfs, I don't really see it overtaking Frosty K as like the meta melee spot. But I do see it doing pretty well, and I see it doing a little better and it is, I think, simming better than Slayer. I'll definitely be doing some testing next week once the buffs are through. But let's go over them one more time and potentially why it makes this so much better for Thane. So for the hero talents, here, let me disable this preview. It's like seeing the side of my screen. It's weirding me out. So lightning strike damage increased by 25%. So that's just the base amount of... That's just whenever you do damage, it's just nature damage. So it goes through armor. One thing that is interesting is that we have to consider is that Storm Strike damage it's increased, but Storm Strike actually goes through armor. So things like our Blade Storm, our Ravager, our Rampage, all of that stuff is actually reduced by enemy armor values, whereas Storm Strike damage in our Thunderclap with Mountain Thane is not. It actually absolutely cranks in AoE packs, and that's a big thing, that our Storm Strike damage ignores armor. Not to mention that all of these things buff the amount of damage that Thunderclap does, so it's going to be a lot better consistent damage. One of the things that Fury actually struggles with, especially in Mythic Plus and high keys right now, is its pack-to-pack damage outside of cooldowns is pretty rough. Actually, if you have no Blade Storm or Odin's Fury, or like all your cooldowns are down and you're fighting a pack, I could easily see Warrior doing less damage than the tank. If the tank is using basically anything in an AoE pack, which is pretty rough for us just because our base kit is so bad. But with Mountain Thane, we kind of circumvent that with having consistent damage through Thunderclaps and through Thunder Blasts and that kind of thing. One thing to note as well, though, that we don't get big resets. It is a 6-second cooldown. I think while Avatar is active, the cooldown of Thunderclap is decreased, so we can still Thunderclap more with Avatar up. But when Avatar is not up, we can actually find ourselves in very niche situations, potentially overcapping the amount of Thunderblast charges we get. And in terms of playstyle, it's actually really, really easy to swap over. You just simply replace Whirlwind with Thunderclap. And then when you have Thunderblast, you hit it. The swap is actually very easy in terms of playstyle. The other thing to note that is interesting is if you go here to Ravager, you'd consider that Ravager would do a lot less damage, right? You go, well, why would I want to spec Ravager? It does a lot less damage. Maybe we play Blade Storm with Thane. But if you actually go in-game, which I'll show you here once this loads up, Ravager actually does quite a bit of damage. So you can see that the AP ratio is basically 120% versus 140% between these. So it means that actually the damage difference between them is 779 versus 637. And considering that while in your Blade Storm, you're not hitting any other buttons, and while Ravager is going, you can hit other buttons, not to mention because Ravager is casting Bloodthirst with Unhinged, you're going to get more Thunderblast procs, because Bloodthirst is what procs our Thunderblast. So it's going to be going pretty good. We're still going to be playing Reckless Abandon, because Reckless Abandon just does more damage and has better single target priority. However, if they do bring those base buffs that they were talking about on the PTR of Bloodthirst and Raging Blow to the anger management playstyle, so you're losing way less single target damage by not playing Reckless Abandon, I could potentially see AM overtaking, at least in Mythic Plus. I don't know about Raid, I have to see the numbers. But in Mythic Plus, for sure, having Wreck and Ravager up a lot more, that's more Wrecks, more Ravagers, more Thunderblasts, it could be really, really good actually. There is talks of Prot Warrior potentially being the like meta Mythic Plus tank, depending. Realistically, it looks like every single tank can be played well in Mythic Plus, and you can just kind of play what your preference is. Prot just might be the meta, but every tank just seems to play well anyway. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that. Another key difference, though, is we're not running Uproar. We're still running 2 points in armor to the teeth. It's quite good. There is this, though, it's kind of weird. I'm not really sure how I feel about this talent. Keep your feet on the ground. Thunderblast reduce damage you take by 8%, so that's an 8% DR. However, in High Mythic Plus, Steadfast as the Peaks is very interesting. It gives you a 5% stamina buff that we can no longer get our endurance training stamina because of all the throughput that is required for Fury. So we get that 5% stamina bump, but when you use Impending Victory, your maximum health increases by 10% for 5 seconds, and when that timer expires, you heal for the original amount that it healed you in excess of the first time. So if you're at full health, you use Steadfast as the Peaks. You have all that extra health. You take the hit, and then you heal that extra bit back up. So the next tick of whatever you might be fighting will heal you, which could be really, really good, actually. Steadfast is actually a very, very good talent. Most people are probably going to keep your feet just because it's passive DR for most things. But Steadfast, depending on what you're fighting, has some real value in high keys. So that's just me rambling off of Lightning Strike's damage. But Ground Current increased by 25% is also pretty big. What Ground Current is when your Lightning Strike hits a target, damage is reduced. Enemies next to that target also take that damage. So they're buffing the AoE of it too. So they're buffing the single target. They're buffing the AoE cleave nature of it. We're also getting a buff to our 2-piece, so Bloodthirst increases the damage of your next Rampage by 15%. Strength of the Mountain increases Bloodthirst and Rampage damage by 30%. And Crashing Thunder increases Thunderclap generates to 8 instead of 5. So Thunderclap is going to be generating a ton of rage, especially with improved Whirlwind. It's going to be generating a ton of rage for us. Sorry, I keep clicking around. It's going to generate a bunch of rage for us. It is also the reason why this is another buff to Thane is because this is going to increase Rampage to 30% on top of Slaughtering Strikes, on top of the tier set bonus, whereas Fury Slayer does not have that Rampage damage bonus. It's got the bonuses to Raging Blow, which affect Reckless Abandon, which is why we've been so Raging Blow focused, because there's basically no Rampage synergy in here. It's just Raging Blow. But with these changes, and with how Mountain Thane works, mainly because Fury has this overwhelming Blades talent, that just means everything takes 10% more damage from us after the nerfs. So, with the nerfs to that talent coming up, where they're nerfing Blade Storm damage, they're nerfing Opportunist, and they're just buffing Thane over and over again. Now, because of these talents, Bloodthirst and Rampage damage increased by 30%, for Raging Blow and it. So, like, basically everything about Mountain Thane is getting buffed. Everything about it's getting buffed. Its AoE is getting buffed. Its single target is getting buffed. Its rage generation is getting buffed. The tier set that makes it work better is getting buffed. Everything synergizes well with Mountain Thane, and I think that's why it's going to be really making a resurgence, at least in Mythic Plus. Like I said, I don't know the numbers yet and how well Fury is going to take this, or Slayer is going to take it. If they bring those Raging Blow BT buffs in, it could make AM Mountain Thane pretty good on single target. But that's all just going to be a numbers thing, right? But going into next week, this is what I will be planning on playing and testing. You can make this, honestly, you can make this a swap point. I don't think the Stormbolt one, it's okay. Honestly, instead of this point here, there, we'll go back to, instead of this point in Stormbolt here, I'm kind of debating whether or not I want to take Intervene instead. Because what Intervene can do is the Stormbolt talent reduces the amount of stun it does, and it increases the cooldown, so it's not that great. But this Storm Shield talent is actually kind of interesting. So if we look at in my full gear right now for Fury Warrior, I have 59k armor. It's not a lot, right? It's not a lot, but 150k shield might be enough to save somebody from an AoE or from like a stomp or from like a big like AoE hit. It might be enough to save them from something like that. If they need a little extra, you know, it might just make that difference. So that might honestly be the play. If you're looking for a more passive play style, you can probably just run the Stormbolts thing and don't take Intervene. But I do find that Storm Shield an interesting choice and something you can help your teammates and healers with, even though the shield isn't that great. Honestly, I kind of hope Storm Shield, for Fury specifically, gets buffed a little bit, so it's a little more valuable for Fury. Whereas Arms, you have so much armor that, whereas as Prot, you actually give people like a 400k shield, and it's kind of juicy. For Fury, it's only like 150k, so it's not as great. So I would honestly like to see the Storm Shield talent buffed a little bit as utility for Fury. But this is what I'm going to be playing. In the description of the video, I'll throw this build up there. This is just from the Wowhead, from the Wowhead guide writer, Archimteros. He built this up. I might make some changes depending on what I want, what I like, what I feel. You know, things like Crackling Thunder. It's not required, right? If your positioning is good, Thunderclap already has a fairly sizable radius of 8 yards. This just makes it go from 8 to 12, so it makes it easier to use. So something like this isn't required. Maybe you can take, depending on the encounter, right? Like if you're doing City of Threads and you're doing the third boss, the like goo guy, when you take the orbs, they actually don't count as damage to you. They count as environmental damage. So it doesn't break Second Wind, and you can use that to just rapidly heal through all the orbs. So that could be some potential there as a flex point. Unfortunately, this is locked off. Honestly, I would rather see. I would kind of rather see Pain and Gain up here. That way we can have Pain and Gain, and then you can either from here you can either choose Stormbolt or something. But I don't know. Maybe that's a bad swap. But I feel like Intervene's probably going to be a little more valuable because everyone's going to be running some kind of stun. But I don't know. Maybe it's good. Having more stops is good. But yeah, no, this is what I've kind of ran out of my train of thought. But this is what I'm going to be looking on playing next week and having fun with, and maybe you can play with it too, because I think it's going to do some good damage. I think that what's ending up happening to Thane is it's probably one buff away from being pretty good. And what ends up happening to a lot of unplayed hero talent specs that we're looking at is they're just going to get buffed over and over and over again until they just become the meta spec to play. And then maybe you'll see them get nerfed slightly down, or a Slayer might get tuned up to match it. But I think fight design and raid design is currently really hurting Slayer and Fury Slayer specifically. But yeah, if you're looking for what to play, your little lightning shocky boy, here it is. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, but I will see you next week. Or, I mean, Tuesday's tomorrow, but I'll upload this tonight. Bye-bye.